Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. We are glad to have you. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, brought to you live on Spreaker, and we'll talk about where else you can find it in just a moment. This is Dr. Richard Owen, joined in Hilltop Studios by...
I'm a surefire.
And...
Uncle Bachi.
Uncle Labachi, full house, ready to go. Lots to talk about. We're going to have a real interesting show for you tonight. I think it'll be a little bit off of the normal beaten path, shall we say, of talking about current events by and large. We are all over social media as Doc Owen Show, DocOwenShow. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, get involved. That's by far the best way to do it and to spread the word. We have a blog that we work on from time to time, but that's a good place you can go to sign up for the Doc Owen Show Insider mailing list, as well as listen to the show. We've got a link out there now where you can listen to the podcast, and that is, of course, DocOwenShow.com. And one of the easiest ways to find us and find all of our podcasts, find the history of the show so you can go back and listen to it, and you can listen to it in 5, 10, 15-minute chunks if that's what you prefer to do, as opposed to an entire hour at the time, which is commercial-free, I might add, is on our apps. We have free apps for both iPhone and Android. Go out to your respective store, do a search on Doc Owen Show, DocOwenShow. In that case, when you're searching for it, it's like 3 words. And look us up, download the app, and get involved. We'd be glad to have you. We are also transmitted a couple of times a week at a minimum on the 3 largest internet radio talk show networks in the world. They happen to be headquartered here in the United States. One's in Philadelphia, one's in Dallas, and one is out on the left coast. And they are, we're very, very proud to be involved with all 3 of these groups and flattered that they carry our show. So you can Google that, look them up, and pick one of those if you'd like. The times vary when they are broadcast on those shows. We always start the show in a traditional manner, a lot of which we just went through, but then we know we're really into the show when Ms. Surefire gives us a moment of inspiration. So, Ima, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from InsideOfTheDay.com. And it's from a lady by the name of Alice Walker. She was a novelist. And her saying is, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Interesting.
Good job.
Thank you.
Bachi?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a historical moment for us?
I sure do, and
Sweet.
I told you to hold that thought. Okay?
Okay.
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 Okay. We're all okay.
We're all
That's
okay.
Right. We are.
Guess when that vernacular entered into the English language?
When Oklahoma was made a state and they abbreviated it.
Nope.
Okay.
It's in 1839, the Boston Morning Post printed it. It was a misspelling of the term all correct, ALLCORRECT.
Yep.
But they spelt it OLLKORRECT.
Oy vey.
So that's where it came from. So it's okay to say okay. But is it okay to say OKAY? I don't know.
Okay.
So that's where that came from. And also this was the day in 1775 where Patrick Henry gave his famous speech declaring, I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. And that
Good
still
one.
holds today.
That's a good one.
1775?
Yes, that
Okay.
was 1775.
Okay. Okay. Hold that thought. Okay. I have one leadership quote tonight from our friends at Crowned Grace International. It's from a gentleman who says hello to a lot of our listening audience and the entire world on no telling how many times a day. The minute you turn on your Windows-based computer and you hear that sound, that's Bill Gates saying hello. Okay, that's the Windows sound, right? Mm-hmm. It's different for an Apple.
Oh, yeah.
So the way that the founder of Apple says hello is completely different from the way Bill says hello.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And this has a bit to do with what you were talking about. Don't let a core strength turn into a core rigidity.
Aha.
Nice.
Yeah, that's important.
Yep.
Okay? Which, based on our background and based on what we keep preaching and how we feel, that's about always being open to learning something new.
Exactly.
Is the way I view that quote. Okay. Tonight we're going to have an interview with a young man by the name of Andres Holliday. Andres, as you will learn, is the executive director of the Chamber, not the Chamber of Commerce, just the Chamber of, I think it's the Christian, no, it's not the Christian Chamber, it's just the Chamber.
It's San Antonio Christian Chamber.
San Antonio Christian Chamber, but not of commerce, and there's a reason for that, and it'll come out. Andres is a millennial, dead in the heart of our target audience and the folks we like to talk to, with, and about. And I think I really think you'll enjoy the conversation. We're going to follow that up with a review of a recent article and survey that was published about the millennials and how they feel about the current president and administration and Congress and stuff like that. And I'm gonna take you through just a minor part of a deep dive as we do that. Uncle Bocce?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to give us a little bit of a walk through history before we get back to some reality?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Let's do that.
Take it.
Okay, we're marching to independence, and we're looking at some of the things that Britain did.
American independence.
The American independence.
Okay, because
yes.
the state capital of Texas was independent, so
yes.
I didn't know what.
Okay. All right. Good. One of the
Actually, it was right outside of Independence at Washington on the Brazos. Go ahead.
One of the acts that they passed after the French and Indian War, which was also the 7 Years' War in Europe, and you remember we talked about how Britain, because at the Treaty of Paris, Britain became the possessor of all the French lands that were west of the Appalachian Mountains.
Okay.
Okay. So
the apple chains, as we call them.
Whatever you call them. Yeah.
Apple chains.
Apple chains. Okay. The reason that Britain declared this proclamation, and I'll tell you exactly what it is, because they wanted to placate the Native Indians. They didn't want to. They had a fear that that the Native Indians were not going to be very cooperative with them, and there's a reason for that as well. Because the colonists had the attitude that they wanted to continue to move westward,
right.
Okay, so that was in there. So what was very important and very key there was, if you remember, there was a very lucrative trade in furs.
Yeah.
And the French and the Indians had a monopoly pretty much on that. So the British, now that they had this land, they had the economic incentive to want to placate the Indians so that they can get the fruits of the sale of all the furs.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's why they wanted the Indians to be involved in that. And there was back and forth going between the French and the English anyway about the fur trade. Now, the problem is what they did, the proclamation did, is it drew a line all the way from Hudson Bay down the spine of the Appalachians and down into Florida as the proclamation line, the line which or border, if you want to call it, that colonists were not allowed to go beyond.
In other words, in current terminology, if it came down, what you're talking about is like the Appalachian Trail, the thing that goes across
all the way
the
from
top.
Hudson Bay.
Okay, which is eastern Tennessee. So they had to stay east of Tennessee, from Tennessee and that corridor right there over to the East Coast.
That's
They
correct.
couldn't venture any further west than that.
Exactly.
They're nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And of course, the British, they tried to spin this as being a protection for the colonists.
Yeah.
But however, they deemed that the costs should be paid for by the colonies. Now, this is a long boundary, and it had to be manned, and there had to be posts all along that. So it was going to cost them a lot of money. So
they wanted to build a wall and get the colonists to pay for it.
Yeah, I guess that's a good analogy. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
How history repeats itself, see?
Full circle.
Yeah. Okay, so from the perspective of the colonists, however, this amounted to a tax to pay for a boundary to lands that was against the interests of the British colonies. Okay, so you got that. All right. So the proclamation line, like I said, it went all the way from Hudson Bay all the way down to Florida.
Wow.
The colonists didn't like this very much. They vehemently resented the Royal Proclamation of 1783.
You think?
And the introduction of the concept of the proclamation line. Prominent American colonists joined with land speculators in Britain to lobby the government to move the line further west. As a result, the boundary line was adjusted in a series of treaties with Native Americans, as we know them today. So the facts of this
Where'd they move it to? Just this side of California?
well, what it did is, and I was going to get into this. No, it moved west enough that it allowed the opening of the lands in Kentucky and Tennessee.
Okay.
Okay, at least there.
Sure, that's
Okay?
good. That's good territory.
So, there was one other fact here. Let's see, rest of the west of the Hudson Bay. And the Indian land, they declared, could not be taken without purchase and all of that. So that was the proclamation that was very unpopular with the colonists, and they were not happy. And this just was one more cog in the wheel toward independence.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, every time that the colonists turned around, Great Britain was trying to put their thumb on them, or
exactly, in one way or another.
In one way or another, tell them how to run their business, how to take care of their country, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Yeah. Well, how'd that work out for them?
Guess what?
Yeah.
1776 came
along. Okay, so but that's our history lesson for tonight. I take it because you put your papers away.
Yes. That's
However,
tonight.
I am reminded of something that you special that you wanted to do tonight after you got through. That's why you did a short history lesson.
Thank you.
Brief history lesson.
Yeah. Next week we'll talk about the Stamp Act controversy.
Okay.
But I want to give a shout out to a very special person.
Okay.
It's my cousin Lucy, who lives in Spring Lake, New Jersey. She had texted me the other day, and she said, I found the app for the Doc Owen Show. She was so excited about it. She said, I am a listener now. So, Lucy, thank you, and keep listening.
She also told him what a good job he does, but which he does. But you remember he said it was his cousin Lucy, so she's like obligated to tell you how good you are, right? Is she?
Well, she's not obligated, but we've always been so close. We're like a mutual, what is it?
Admiration
society.
That was kind of my point.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks for joining us, Lucy. We're glad to have you. Bring some of your friends.
Hi, Lucy.
I think that's pretty cool. You bet. The whole Doc Owen Show welcomes you aboard. How do they get a hold of you, Uncle Bocce? I know your mailbox is getting full quite frequently.
UNCLEBACI at docowenshow.com.
Boom. And
there you go.
And you're a Twitter guy, too.
I'm Twitty. I'm very Twitty.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's Uncle_Bocce on Twitter.
BACI.
Yes.
Okay, we got it. Just came across the wire before showtime, so I'm going to interject this very quickly, and then we'll move on. It seems that our lawmakers, as it was referred to in the article, are considering making Barack Obama's birthday a national holiday. I'm not good.
You don't need to say anything.
Okay, I thought we already had Black Friday.
And Black Lives Matter.
All sorts of stuff.
I'll tell you, that's enough.
I'll do one more thing. I saw a joke, a cartoon.
Yeah.
And somebody had put Barack Obama's image up on the mountain. What's that mountain called where the four presidents are?
Mount
Rushmore. They had
Uh-huh.
added Barack Obama, and and they were asking for opinions, and this was on Facebook, and somebody posted the opinion that wouldn't that be defacing a national monument?
There you go. Yes, exactly.
I thought
For
it was pretty clever.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the conversation that I had with Andres Holliday. Andres is I think you will find, extremely bright and articulate young man. And he does a bit of talking about his own generation. And as I was trained to do and relaying to Uncle Bocce before the show, you can only really poke fun and bash people of whom you are the same. In other words, I don't have much of a right to bash millennials. I can talk about what I learn about it, et cetera, but I can't really bash them because I'm not one of them. And speaking of that, before we get into Andres, I'd also like to make this is a huge announcement. So I hope everybody's sitting down. This is going to come as a real surprise to you, but I'm considered a member of what is called the baby boomer generation. All right. Mm-hmm. And I think that portrays a very significantly improper image of who we are. I think we should change our name to Generation Curmudgeon.
Love it.
So I'm going to mount a campaign for Generation Curmudgeon.
The GK.
You can start a hashtag.
We are the majority older generation. No disrespect to the great generation, which was the one that preceded us, right?
Right.
The greatest generation. My dad and others. And there are still some of them left, and God bless them all, But we are the majority, and I think that we have earned the right to call ourselves Generation Curmudgeon, particularly because of a lot of our viewpoints appear to be that way to the younger generation. And if it's of any consolation to you, when I was the age of the millennials, I thought that my generation was a bunch of curmudgeons too. So it happens every time as young people come along. Okay, let's get into the interview with Mr. Andres Holliday, please. Thank you.
No, I was never told. Is there like a particular topic you guys wanted to talk about?
No, not at all. I want to talk. What I want to talk about is the Christian Chamber of Commerce that you are the executive director of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. Sure.
I wanted to know more about that and tell my listeners, and then we'll see where it goes. So let me introduce you first, and we'll make it official, and get started with the recording. I am about to have a conversation with a young man that I met, I think, a couple of years ago when he was at Texas A&M San Antonio, and was kind of ramrodding a mayoral candidate forum, and I was extremely impressed with one thing that he did, and that was he invited everybody. He didn't play any favorites. He didn't care who was winning. He didn't care who the front runners were or who had the big money or the biggest name. Or he brought everybody that had their hat in the ring to become mayor of San Antonio up to the stage and treated them all equally. His name is Andres Holliday. Mr. Holliday, how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, so thank you. I appreciate you having me. And yeah, that was definitely a wonderful event, and it was interesting just even having all of them up there. I think there was maybe 14 or so running, so it was definitely a show.
It really was a show. You managed it well. We're laughing. If you weren't there or not familiar, he had one character on board that was decided he was going to attract all the attention and provide very little of value, but Andres handled it pretty well. Tell me, you were at that time. You were the president or the head of what, the student body or the Young Republicans on campus, or what exactly was your title at the time that sort of put you out in front of that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I happened to be student body president at that time.
Okay.
So, and it just so happened that really my goal at that point in time was I wanted to showcase that the South Side is a huge influence in the community, and it could definitely be something that is going to be the future of a lot of the development. So I wanted to bring that attention down here, and we were one of the few, if not the only, mayoral candidate forum that was on the South Side, and so it was a good way to represent them.
Yeah, you did a very good job. You represented in a number of ways, not the least of which what I said was being all inclusive. But he has since graduated and gone on to bigger and better things, and is now the executive director of a group called the Christian Chamber. I think is it just Christian Chamber of San Antonio or Christian Chamber of Commerce?
We're Christian Chamber of San Antonio.
Okay.
And really, the reason we did that was that we don't want to be held back by, just commerce from what it normally is thought of. We eventually want it to be, of San Antonio, even of medicine or a chamber of law, or
I like it.
This is kind of the beginning we see, or the prototype for what can be a much larger movement.
I think that's very wise. I think that's wise on a number of fronts. It shows the difference in the generations, because I'm sure you can't tell from Andre's voice, but he's a younger guy. Let's put it that way. I think you'd classify in the category that everybody throws the word millennials around after. Is that true? Or
well, I'm 25 years old, so I
nice.
think I fall with that millennial category. But yeah, it's interesting how generations really depending on what generation you come in, can kind of show the type of really approach that you take to your future and to the way you kind of perceive the world. It's very interesting, and I think the millennial community is, if not going to be the most influential, it is currently one of the most influential groups or generations that has ever. I mean, it's most privileged. They have the most information available to them. They have the most opportunity available to them. But I'll take the millennial badge all day. But I kind of feel like the millennials are dropping the ball. But to put it to say the least. But yes, I am a millennial, definitely.
Well, I would agree with you on that last statement. Actually, I'd agree with you on everything you said. As you know, the tagline of the Doc Owen Show is "Deliver Truth to Youth," and so our target audience that we like to talk to and with are your age group, because
absolutely.
It is. I find it quite interesting and quite challenging. I am not of that generation. I'm a baby boomer. So we take our hits, but at the same time, we grew up, just to tell you, the opinion of us was the same thing. We had it made. We were, everything was going in our favor. We were the kids with the golden or the silver spoon in our mouths and things like that, because our parents had done such a good job after World War II of really getting into work and growing America. So I'm not surprised. I think every generation that comes along winds up with the same sort of challenges in terms of making your way. You don't want. Hopefully, you don't want to necessarily push my generation out of the way, but you want to push your way in. You have to push your way into the conversation. Do you get that?
And I completely understand where you're coming from, and I can definitely agree with what you're saying. I can see that, in my opinion, even from the Christian Chamber's perspective, is that you have to find a way to. The elders have wisdom, and in history is important. Let's not forget where we're coming from. Because then we won't even know where we're going.
That's right.
And one thing that I've definitely noticed is that there is a small difference in the fact that your generation at that time, or the baby boomers, or even the generation after that, they had an outlet at our age, at the 25 or 30, whether it was music or whether it was, at that time you had the rock music, you had pop culture that was much more of an outlet for a lot of people that are in my age. And in our generation, if you look at just even the music industry, it's so bland and it's just repetitive to where it's hard for really my youth to be able to express any creativity or expressions through it.
Interesting.
So what's happening is you're seeing millennials go into politics, and instead of us being able to create an identity for ourselves, like what your generation has done, we're just kind of following along with what we're being told should be the direction we go. And I think that there's a lot of millennials who see that and who are who are the ones who are quickly to say, well, why that way? Why socialism?
Right.
Why is it that we should have it free? Who's going to actually pay for this? And so there's a perspective that a lot of millennials are falling under. And it's really, and in my opinion, it has nothing to do with them themselves. It has to do with the fact that a lot of times our opinion isn't really in the arena anymore.
Right.
And
right.
especially with those folks. And I noticed that a lot in higher education, that it was always about making sure that every opinion had an opportunity to speak except for ours. And that's why I was able to have so much notoriety back then when I was student body president, because normally the student body president was the guy who followed along the rules, and I saw it as a chance to let's really challenge the ideas of what's going on. And so, yeah, the millennial group, I meet many of them, and they're an amazing population. I'm just wondering, is it? And I appreciate kind of your perspective of it, which is that every generation's had kind of that moment that they go through in life, and they kind of they have to decide how to identify themselves.
Right.
But we're struggling with that as far as really what is it that millennials are known for, and a lot of it's really negative. So I think it's interesting. Now we're in some interesting times.
Well, I sort of, on your behalf, I sort of resent that negativity, because I talk to an awful lot of very bright, young, active, dedicated millennials, just like yourself. And I think, here's what I think the greater challenge is. Because of technology, because of the internet, because of the way you've grown up with the dispersion of all the information, it's as simple as when I needed to know something, or my peers needed to know something, we went to the library. And we bumped into each other. We ran into there was far more sort of physical contact. And
Absolutely. You're
not required to do that any longer. That may be a good thing. I think it's a great thing, but at the same time, that's some of the challenge you're feeling with getting the generation to gel, if you will, is because you're having to gel over Facebook and Twitter and social media and email, and I mean, phones are antiquated to you guys. Talking on the phone.
No, yes.
Every time
No,
I walk up,
exactly.
I'll see 4 or 5 millennials all texting, and I'll just get in the middle of them and say, you guys could talk directly to each other, like they're texting each other, and they always laugh. But that's sort of my image of, come on, get your head out of there, and you know what I'm saying. So,
No, absolutely.
so
What's
I
interesting
see the
about that-
difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about that, and that's why I really do think one of the things I push for is that I always tell millennials it's important you find mentors who are from a different generation than you, because, us as millennials, we don't learn the same way as they have before. And we've actually, it's different. The way we learn now, in my opinion, is that we're an instant gratification person. If I ask a question, I want to watch a movie, what's the next movie? We Google it, or we just ask Siri. And before, you used to have to be able to retain the knowledge. You used to have to go and find out, hey, you know what? I know the movies are coming out because I had to retain that knowledge. Now, we don't look at knowledge the same way as far as having to retain it. We say it's kind of just an accessory. Whenever I need the knowledge, I'll use it.
All right.
So,
yes, sir. I joke about it all the time. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think if we were able to combine both methods, imagine that. We have access and we're knowledgeable on how to get to any information that exists. If we could only now learn how to retain a lot of that information, it'd be wild.
It's easy. It's called bookmarking.
There you go, right? Technology finds the way. But really, as far as trying to get them together and to really get them to work together on the same page, I've noticed it really only takes a conversation, and it takes a conversation to where you take them to push their limits, push their questions, and not just a surface challenge, but really show that you care and look and ask more. There's an organization called Turning Point USA that focuses on bringing more youth and more millennials to be active in the political process. Well, something that they push and they teach that their activists is that the more questions you ask, the more likely they're going to learn from you, and the more likely that they're going to wanting to agree with you and learn to be kind of understand you better. And so they're hungry for knowledge. They want to change the world. And I think it's time that the Republican Party, and I happen to be Republican only because it happens to be the only one that I'm truly conservative, but I'm Republican because it's the only one that lines up with me. But in my opinion, and I tell this to people all the time, in my opinion, I think the Republican Party has one more chance.
Yep.
They have one more chance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's Donald J. Trump. And I'm telling you, if he messes up, it's going to be a grand new party. It's not going to be the grand old party anymore.
No, it's gonna definitely it would turn a new leaf. I totally agree with you, and that's not a generational concept or issue.
No, it's a movement.
It's totally a movement. Go back just a minute. I tell you what I think one of the and first of all, you need to know my mentors are your age. In all seriousness, I mean, I didn't, I went back and went back to college at 55, got an MBA, and then finished my PhD when I was 63. And then I picked up a 27-year-old instructor that taught me how to snowboard when I was 67. So I'm going completely backwards, but that's the reason we like to deliver truth to youth. That's where my mentors are. I want to know. I'm a college professor, and it's important to me to understand what drives the next group, because at the same time I can turn around and say, okay, but have you thought about this? Have you know what I'm saying? And that's what you're talking about.
Important.
Exactly. It is
that's
important.
Vital.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a two-way street, and that's the conversation you're talking about having. I tell you what I think the challenge is a lot of times is focus. We hear, I'm taught by my mentors in this little podcasting / internet radio business that 12 to 15 minutes is the attention span of the average listener. And I think that's I think there's way too much truth to that. You know what I'm saying? Just like you're talking about picking up a phone or going to some sort of a device or asking Siri for the instant knowledge that you need, which, by the way, I'm delighted with that because now I don't get caught with an old man syndrome of not being able to remember anything. I don't have to. It's all on my phone.
There you go.
So I don't get beat up for that anymore. But except that I can't seem to describe to Siri the look on the guy's face of the movie star that I'm trying to come up with the name of.
One day,
she's
we're
always
not too far away either.
Yeah, she's always going, show me a picture. I don't have if I had a picture, I'd know the star's name. So anyway, but to me, it's a matter of focus. It's a matter of really deeply, pick a spot, and that's the switch that every generation has to go through. Do you know what I'm saying? Our galvanizing point was probably the Vietnam War. To either we were in it or we were not against it. But I think mostly the young people that were railing out at the time it was about confusion. It was about what are you doing, and we knew we weren't doing what we were told we were doing. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, exactly.
And I think I see some of the same things beginning to bubble up. And as painful as it may be a good transition point that's going to now galvanize everybody into being Americans as opposed to being something American.
No, absolutely. And, I see it as, when the millennials are, and I agree with you, I think that it was the Vietnam War that really made a difference as far as the culturalistic perspective and how that generation grew. For us, I'm not sure if I've necessarily, and I do think that we're going into something. We're asking more questions, but I don't know that if there's necessarily one moment or so that really changed that.
Oh, no. Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, what I would say is it's interesting because I think the battle of ideas that's going on right now in the minds of millennials is so complex, so personalized. I mean, I used to work for a company called Americans for Prosperity, and one of the things that
I'm familiar. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Absolutely. One thing that we were very supportive with them was, or that I liked about it, and this is why I'm so data mined now, is that we had over 150 bits of information per person. I mean, we could tell you what cigarettes they smoked. We can tell you what kind of car they had, how long they had the car. We can tell you if they drove more often than other people.
Right.
I mean, it was amazing what we were able to do just to produce more of a profile of these people.
Right.
And so when we're talking about millennials, I mean, it's an all-out assault to try to get into the kind of their realm of ideas. But see, in my opinion, and I think this is something that your generation has blessed us with, is that there's I don't know if you're familiar with the 7 liberal arts, but there's the original trivium, which is it's the original basic structure of education. So you have grammar, which is kind of like the establishment of the language, how that works, and then that turns into logic. And the original format said that from logic, then you would develop rhetoric. You'd be able to persuade people to your understanding. Now, the structure of that system was always based on truth, because you couldn't have logic without truth, because the grammatical structure was made to produce truth. But what happened in the beginning, or actually the late 1800s, was that there was a cultural shift to eliminate rhetoric as the third arm, and it traded it over for philosophy or ideas. So what happened was, now instead of people using logic to develop an honest argument, they're using logic to develop an idea. And so when you use logic to develop an idea, there is no need for truth, because an idea is relative and it doesn't exist. So it could be anything. It could, and so that's affected, especially us as millennials, how we look at the world. We are very idealistic. We feel like and maybe it's every generation at this point in time, but we see that the world should be this way, and we believe it should be that way. Like, for example, free college. I mean, I have student debts, and trust me, don't think I don't think free college is great. I think it's awesome.
Sure.
Okay? But that doesn't mean that it's reasonable and right.
Right.
And that's what I think is really challenging us. How do we make sure that morality? This morning we had a wonderful event with a technology, a CTO, a chief technology officer, and he kind of challenged us as a Christian community and said, there's some serious decisions that are being made. Genetic, editing. I don't know if you knew this at all, but did you know that you could own the moon? That people own the moon now, and they're going to go mine the moon.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here so behind in what's going on. And so if we don't find a way to improve how we communicate with millennials, if we don't see what's being done and from the educational standpoint, I mean, I do get a little nervous, and I'm glad that people like you exist, because it's a little nerve-wracking, and you can kind of calm us down. But it really, we are in some dangerous times now. We really are.
Oh well, don't misunderstand. The intent is not to calm you down. the intent is to help you learn how to leverage that, what I would refer to as enthusiasm. And that's really all it is. It's just enthusiasm for life. Let's get on with it. Explain to me what exactly you want me to do, and let me tell you how that impacts me, and we'll get on with it. No, I see it all as enthusiasm. I see it sometimes as challenging enthusiasm, but enthusiasm nonetheless.
Well, exactly, right. And for me, in my age, being 25, and being able to lead the Christian Chamber in the direction that we're going, really, it has been a challenge. I've had those people who, as I'm learning, not just as their, political structures and so on and so forth, and culturalistic structures within the secular business community, I have also learned there's the same thing in the Christian community, and it's a little bit tighter there too. But
there's politics everywhere. There is politics in every walk of life. Yes, sir.
And as we grow as a Christian community, I think it's a blessing that I grew up in a culture of Christianity where it wasn't about you. We grew up that it's not about going to church, to have a particular church that you sit on a committee for, or
right,
that you're volunteering for. It's really down to the fundamental. Do you have a relationship with Christ, and is He moving you?
Right.
And if He is moving you, are you going in the right direction, or are you just running with your head cut off? And so that's kind of how we see Christ, and we love Him for who He is. And so when I look at the Christian Chamber, I see this as an opportunity, and definitely to get those Christian millennials involved. And there's some amazing millennials that are
yes,
Christians
sir.
that are
using
their lives.
They're
using their lives as service. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, I've had the opportunity to talk to several of them, and young evangelists, young preachers, I'm like, dude, it's very, very impressive, and you want to get that, spread that word. Where did you grow up, Andres? If you don't mind me asking you, where are you from?
Sure, I'm born and raised here in San Antonio.
Really?
I'm the first person in my family to be born in Texas, and I proudly wear that badge of honor. In my opinion, my parents always say they got here as fast as they could. I was born here, so that, you got nothing on me, But I was born and raised right here. I went to MacArthur High School, actually.
Good.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. I was just curious, and good on your parents for getting here in time that you could be born here.
Right. No, exactly, man.
Well,
exactly.
We got to do this again. I try to keep these to about 15 to 20 minutes, but man, you really struck some chords. And I knew when I met you out there on the South Side that I was instantly, and I was not only instantly impressed, but continued to be impressed because we didn't get to talk or cross paths very much, but I followed what you were doing, and it's really cool. And I would love the opportunity. I'd love the opportunity to come speak to your Christian chamber and have a conversation with you, so we could turn the tables a little bit. But
I think that'd be great.
We'll definitely do this radio thing again.
Absolutely. I appreciate everything you're doing, Doc. And really, there needs to be more people like you who focus on my generation and help and guide them, because I think it's a very crucial time for us. And of course, anytime you want to come by and speak to the chamber, feel free just to give me a call, and we'll make sure that happens.
Listen, we're going to tighten this relationship up. You really struck some chords. I appreciate it, Andres.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have fun, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Welcome back. We are now back in live mode. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I got one thing that I need to say and to clarify. While Andres was talking, if you'll recall, just before we put him on, I made that remark about Obama and the lawmakers making a holiday, and I thought we already had it and referred to it as Black Friday. And I know that a lot of you went instantly to the fact that I was being a racist and referring to the color of his skin. Absolutely not true. I was referring to the black mark that I think he left on the United States of America in terms of world opinion. And nothing has come to the forefront more often in the last 8 years than the word hypocrite. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to, make sure that you knew that I try not to be one. And at the same time, I felt like maybe some of you might need to hear the definition of a hypocrite. Because a lot of times there's words in the language that are being batted around a lot, and nobody really understands what they mean. A hypocrite, according to the dictionary, is a person, actually the first definition, I loved it. The first definition, when you look up hypocrite, it says a person who indulges in hypocrisy. Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
that's like, you shouldn't be able to use the word in its own definition. A person who pretends to have virtues, moral or religious beliefs, principles, etc., that he or she does not actually possess, especially a person whose actions belie stated beliefs. Okay, that's enough said about that. But the remark about Black Friday was in reference to the mark that I think it has, the stain that I think it has left on the United States of America. Let's get into how young Americans, since we just heard from Andres, and you got an earful of what he thinks and some really good logic and some good information behind what he said. Earlier in the week this week, I was stunned by a headline in something that came across the desk. It said, "Young Americans, most see Trump as illegitimate president." Okay? We're talking, and this happens to be a survey conducted of 18 to 30-year-olds. All right? The target audience, the millennials. And it talks about 57% see Trump's presidency as illegitimate, including about 3/4 of blacks and large majorities of Latinos and Asians. So anytime I see a poll, there's one of the very first things that I was trained in when I went through the PhD program was a deal called Threats to Validity. We took an entire course called Threats to Validity. And what they were training us to do, what they were instructing us to do, teaching us to do, was to verify or look deeper into what other PhDs say. Just because it's published and just because it's out there and they say, boom, these are facts. You got to look behind the scenes, and statistics particularly. You have to look and see, well, wait a minute, where did these numbers come from? How can they make those statements? Because I had a hard time. I'm just not going to accept that 57% of the young people think that Trump is not the legitimate president. I think that 100% of the vocal ones think he's not legitimate. But anyway, so a slim majority of young whites in the poll, 53%. So right there, That tells me the author's trying to skew your opinion, because 57% is huge by their estimation, but 53% is slim. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, that was the first thing that jumped out at me. Like, wait a minute, it can't be that close and be that far apart. So, but even among that group of the 53%, 55% disapprove of the job he's doing. So it says overall, just 22% of young adults approve of the job he is doing as president, while 62% disapprove. All right. This is what they put out there. They don't necessarily vote for one party's candidates or another's. Just a quarter of young Americans have a favorable view of the Republican Party, and 6 in 10 have an unfavorable view. The Democratic Party performs better, but views aren't overwhelmingly positive. You following me? In other words, what they came to the conclusion was that young people don't like any of them. Don't like either one of the parties. Mm-hmm. All right. But then you look at the numbers. The very first question was about the approval of Trump, and you just got those numbers. Then it went into the thing was put out by a group called Gen Forward, and you can go look them up if you want to, genforward.org. But it was funded by Black Youth. Hold on, let me make sure. The Black Youth Project. All right. So it is out of the 1,833 adults aged 18 to 30, 516 were black. 277 were Asian Americans, 504 identified as Latinos, all right, and 505 identified as white. First of all, and this is one of Emma's hot buttons, Latino is not a race.
Correct.
Latino is white. Mm-hmm. End of discussion. And Tucker Carlson called Jorge Ramos on that not too long ago. So, that's one kind of thing that you have to look at, is they don't even know what a race is. So, and when Emma was so hardcore about that, I had to go back and look it up. And what did I find out? 1962 or 1960 census is the first time that Hispanics showed up on the census as an option to, under the white race. So anyway, but in looking at the numbers, I can tell you, these are predominantly, by far, Democrats that took this poll, not Republicans. They are far more favorable to they show the Republican Party as anywhere from 46 to 43% unfavorably, and they are the same percentage favorable to the Democrats. So it's no wonder. So that tells you the type of information that they're coming out with, and the type of information that they bring to the poll itself. Anytime you see numbers in the press, mainstream or alternate or anywhere, check the source. Make sure you know what you're looking at. Dig a little bit deeper.
That's true, because I remember too on Facebook, when the elections were going on, and they were always talking about, Trump's behind the polls, Trump behind the polls.
Right.
I got into it with some people on Facebook. I said, you better know who that source is.
That's exactly right. That's
they
exactly
didn't like
right.
that. That was too bad.
And but before we lose our airtime, I'd like to give a shout out to the folks up in West Texas and the Panhandle that are fighting a huge grass fire. Over 10,000 acres have been burned, and it is 0% contained. It's been hot and dry up there, and something sparked it, and it is burning across the countryside like nobody's business. So it's one of the hotter hashtags on Twitter, thank goodness. But, prayers go out to you, and hope everything turns out all right for you. We're real glad you joined us. I hope you enjoy. Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.